This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I am your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. Thank everybody for joining us. This is our 115th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. And as always, throughout our journey, we put a special emphasis on mental health. And this show is dedicated to that genre, to that area, because it's very important. And I want to talk to my guests about, with all the things going on, are people more open to checking or working on their mental health? And it seems with all the things going on, the mass shootings, gas is $5, so many things in the news everywhere. It just seems like it just gets so massive and crazy, and you just want to rip your hair out if you have some. We don't know what to do. So are people more prone to be open to coming and talking or working on their mental health? And we have several professionals here, and I want to get those questions answered for our audience and those who are going to be interested, to find out what we can do, how that they can work on their mental health, and what they can do or what can be done if there's a stigma out there, if there's a stigma. Sister Nikita, I would like for you to introduce yourself and then speak briefly to what I have said, but please introduce yourself.
My name's Nikita Bowman. I'm a licensed professional counselor out of Houston, Texas. I have founded the Tackle Your Dreams organization, which is a nonprofit that is working.
Oh, no.
Oh, she went out for a second, something happened. That's okay. Sometimes that happens. Sister Cassandra, can you chime in and go ahead with your introduction? We'll come back to you, Sister Nikita.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, my name is Cassandra Barnes. I am both a registered nurse as well as a licensed psychotherapist here in Houston. I am the owner of the Victoria Barnes Mental Health and Wellness Center, where I facilitate a very comprehensive approach to mental health management, incorporating my background as a registered nurse, as well as a psychotherapist and as a licensed minister of God. So I incorporate all of those things as I seek to help my clients. When you relate it to this mental health crisis, and it definitely is exploding. We can't recover from one tragedy before we're having to deal with another tragedy. And it's almost to the point where we're starting to see it and hear it so much that we're almost getting fatigued from even having to process it. Those of us that are mental health professionals, it's just at the point where you just can't hear about another mass shooting or another tragedy or another. It's just overwhelming. When you look at the fact that I know 3 of us for sure are licensed therapists that's on this platform. We're trained to understand how to deal with mental health matters, and yet we're struggling. I, as of today, actually signed up to get my own therapist, which I was supposed to get even when I was working on my internship some years ago, because the term every therapist needs a therapist is a real issue. But it's just so overwhelming at this point that I said I need to have someone that I can speak to and talk to as well. So it is very real crisis. People are just not able to cope. They're not able to problem solve effectively. They're not able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's a very real situation. So I appreciate you having this platform and look forward to contributing.
Thank you very much, as always, Sister Cassandra. I want to go to Sister Camille Sister Camille, thank you for being here. And you come at things from a different perspective. Share who you are and your perspective as you want to present it.
Okay, my name is Camille Chate. I have a degree in chemical engineering, but I have started my own business, Houston Sea Moss Queen. I sell sea moss, which helps with all types of health issues, mainly kind of as a superfood and helping with like high blood pressure, bones, joints, weight loss, things like that. But as far as the topic at hand, mental health and kind of, I guess, the pulse of America, I feel that, can you repeat the question again? Because I was about to do an overview, but I feel like you asked something specifically.
No, go ahead and do an overview. I think that would fit in what we are talking about.
Okay.
But of course, mental health and your outlook on it, how you feel about it, how important is it to our society and everything. So I apologize for that. I sure thought my phone was down. But from that perspective, just share what you would like to share.
Okay, so I believe mental health is very important. I believe in having strong foundations before you can start anything. So if we look at the mind, body, and soul, I spent a lot of time working through my own personal childhood traumas and just kind of building myself from transitioning from corporate world to being an entrepreneur, because I feel like if I'm not together, how can I build on top of that? So this is my second year, going into my third. And this past year, I've spent a lot of time just dealing with that type of stuff, because I could easily, take advantage of social media, take advantage of websites and just really push my products. However, say it hits, because CMOS is very popular right now, and I have all these orders coming in, and now I'm growing and now I'm building, and I'm supposed to be the cornerstone of my business, and I haven't tackled these things. You have more money, more problems. So I've been really trying to take a step back, and I feel that I look at the approach more as soul, mind, and body. As far as like I feel like your spiritual journey fuels your mental health. If I'm trying to suppress things and just adapt to things instead of hitting them head on, they're just going to build and build and build on top of each other until it just collapses. And I feel like a lot of us do that. And to go back to what Miss Cassandra said about, like all the tragedies and everything that's going on, I feel as though, especially with us kind of losing our first teachers with the whole feminist movement, a lot of women in the workforce, we don't have the mothers and our first teachers at home to teach us a lot of things. So we're just thrown into school and you just kind of figure it out as you go. And with all this kind of happening, I feel personally that a lot of it's related to us not having those strong foundations in our youth and knowing a routine, knowing good habits, and knowing how to really, adult from a true constructive platform, not just kind of on the job trying to figure it out. And I feel like when things come to a head, that's when you really see kind of who has the processes in order and then who doesn't. And just like, looking at yourself and filling the gaps on your, progress as a person, and just learning how to really juggle, because the day and age we live in is very fast paced. And it's like, especially with technology, I feel like everyone has access to us, and that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety, because years ago, people could only contact you if you were at work or if you were at home. But now people have access to you 24/7, and you never really get time to break away. So creating those processes to have boundaries is very, very important. So I believe mental health is needed, especially in our day and age.
Yes, ma'am. Very important. That's why we wanted to have this forum and hear many different perspectives. I'd like to go back to Sister Nikita. You were cut off earlier. Continue with your introduction and tell us about Tackle Your Dreams.
Yes, Tackle Your Dreams is a nonprofit organization where my goal is to empower and help educate get more Black, brown, and queer therapists into the career field. And so what most of my clients tell me when I ask them, well, how did you pick me? They say, well, if I can say it, it's because you're Black and I want somebody who looks like me. And they have a very difficult time finding somebody just simply who is Black, nonetheless Black, female, and queer on top of that. And so through my experiences, I've looked at several different points where there's a cog in the system that keeps Black folks from being able to get licensed by getting good placements, actually finishing our licensing, being able to pass the test, getting our hours, having to work while working, which is making that process even longer. And so what I'm building is an opportunity for folks who are in the system to be able to actually finish their license and then help them to get their hours to get fully licensed. And so that's basically how I spend most of my days, if not doing therapy. And so the other part of that is that I think as Black people and Black and brown folks particularly, we all need therapy. We're dealing with things that the others would tell us we need to just get over. Things that our parents haven't healed from, generational traumas. I was writing today about, I guess there was this small plot of land in Manhattan that was Manhattan Beach that was taken from a Black couple. And things like that have happened historically from us, our land being taken from us, our business being burned to the ground. Oh, okay. Am I talking too fast?
No. I'm just
Okay.
saying your connection is, your technology is sticking a little.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
But
exactly
go
what to
ahead
do.
and share that and what you were sharing.
Yes.
Where's Manhattan Beach?
It's in California.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a
Yes,
particular,
and that is a
just
big
like,
part of, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say
go
that
ahead.
is a big part of the trauma that we have had to endure as Black people. Sister Kanisha, she put on her Facebook page how in our families, we have to find ways to support our businesses, our dreams, our goals, whereas other people might not necessarily have to go through the same avenues we do because they have inheritance, they have different other resources that we didn't have the possibility of getting because of the road and the journey that we've had to go through. I want to go and introduce Brother Times real quick. Brother Times?
Yes, my name is Brother Times. I'm a pastor. I've been in ministry, ordained and licensed since 1990. Been working with various organizations over the years, working with kids and support groups in schools, structured activity programs and things of that nature, all the way up to the present. I'm not licensed currently in Texas. I am working on my license. So that's ironic that you mentioned that piece. But I'm licensed in Virginia. So work with that. I got a Master of Arts in Counseling. I've been to seminary. Primarily now, I work with people, and I'm kind of like you, Cassandra, because I mix the spiritual with the therapeutic pieces. And so I find that to be very advantageous. When I used to work for a mental health agency here in Houston, I wasn't necessarily free to do that. When I was at the agency, my rule was that if the client brings up God, then I can talk about it. And so that's kind of how I function quite a bit, but it was still that line. So I just kind of moved into Chris Times ministry now. So I'm free to do and practice like I want to. So I've got an office out of Galveston, so I'm working out of that. And I do a lot of things via Zoom. I'm now seeing patients, my clients. I've got clients in the UK now. I've got clients in Hawaii. I'm billing my clientele. So that's a little bit about me.
Sounds powerful, sounds powerful. I want to start asking some questions, some very pertinent questions. I went into it in the beginning. does the times that we're in, does these circumstances, does this trauma that is happening everywhere, school shootings, gas, everything, does it make people much more open and willing? Sister Nikita, if you will talk to that.
100%, I think it does. I think the time that we're in now, you guys mentioned spirituality, and I'm more with Sister Camille as far as mixing spiritual growth, as far as ancestral, what's going on in the universe, what's going on with crystals and that kind of thing are the type of clientele that I get. And I'm not saying that that's not the type of clientele y'all get, but you get what I'm saying. And so what I'm finding is now we're being able to connect what has happened to us in the past, and we're trying to reconcile that with what is happening to us still, and finding the coping skills to have these conversations, because a lot of times I think we don't have conversations as a community. The families aren't having conversations. Children are thinking they have to be strong for their parents. Parents are thinking they have to be strong for their children. We're not talking about the things that we need to talk about. And so now that a lot more is being seen through social media, as far as what's being shared through video, what's being shared through text message, people are coming in and wanting to talk about the things that are happening in their families, the things that are happening in the society. And I think people, as far as allyship, are also understanding their specific parts. So I'm getting other people that are coming in. How can I be an ally? Black Lives Matter to me. How can I put myself out there? And so it's interesting to see the shift since when I started to now. How can I deal with COVID? How can I learn? And they're utilizing the terminology so we know whatever marketing is going on is working, as far as how can I learn more coping skills, effective communication, things of this nature. So I think the times are making people have, I actually had someone come in and put in their intake, the mass shootings, trauma that's happening out in the world. I just need help with dealing with it because I don't know what to do. I'm 70 years old and she was a therapist on top of that. How do I deal with all this stuff? Because I'm losing hope, I'm losing faith, and I don't want to. And so, yes, they're coming in, and I think people are a lot more open. The stigma, I think, is starting to rescind, especially when it comes to Black, brown, and queer folks, that we are more inept or in need of therapy than most other people are.
Yes, ma'am. At that point about Black people also, specifically, we had a machoism where we did not want to admit that we needed help. It was specifically in our community, we had that, oh no, we can't go down that road. We're weak if we are admitting we need help and so forth. So what I'm hearing from you is that is changing. Black people are being much more
That is
open.
changing.
Okay.
And not to mention the
board.
religion piece as well. A lot of people said, well, I have God, I have Jesus, I don't need a therapist. I'm like, well, God and Jesus created therapists for a reason. And you need an intermediary that can give you that inline feedback as to what's going on, as well as developing some of these coping skills. So I think the church, like Pastor Times, being able to come in and say, I actually had a pastor, another 70-year-old woman that came in and was like, I need you to come work with my church because we have so many trauma. We have the young kids who don't understand about sexuality and the way forward. We have people going through trauma and all these things, and I can only do so much as a pastor. I need someone who can come in and do some classes and grief counseling and different things of this nature. So I think the church, being our ally, is helping out as well with the shift in the stigma around mental health.
Yes, ma'am. Sister Camille, what have you heard across the board with your friends and with people in the community? Do they feel, hey, I need somebody to talk to? More and more things are happening. What's going on? I need more people to talk to. I need somebody to help me. What have you heard?
As far as that part in relation to what's going on in society, I don't feel like I've heard that directly, more because I know I try to, I really believe in protecting your peace. So I know a lot of people, you know, watching the news that can bombard you, as well as other people bringing negative stuff, or just kind of more, not always negative, but just more, I guess, tragic topics in. But I do hear a lot of people in my age range, like mid-20s, a little younger, 30s, talking about therapy, and talking about they're going to therapy and how it's helping them. And I mean, to the point sometimes when you're just trying to vent to people, they'll say, hey, you going to see a therapist? Kind of to the point, it's just like it's a big flip, I feel like, with the generations that have come. So I don't feel that anyone's shining away from it, especially in those age ranges at all.
Okay, Sister Cassandra, what do you feel about this subject? About, is it more people that wish to open up? They say they need help. You said that you went and got help yourself. You went and talked to a therapist. Are you seeing that across the board? And especially with Black people? Are more Black people doing it? We used to have such a stigma against it.
Younger Blacks for sure. From 30 years back, they are, because they're not acclimated in the church environment like we were growing up. And I'll be 60 in December. All we knew was pray about it and all of that in our generation. Their generation is much more aware on many levels, and that's good and bad, positive and negative. So they're not even acclimated a lot, especially clients in their 20s are not even acclimated to pray about it, because that whole piece is lining up with the fact of that generation is not going to church like we used to go to church anyway. So it's a lot of dynamics around that. They don't have a problem seeking therapy, even if they can only afford 4 sessions or 1 month if they have to pay for it, or they'll use their benefits on their job a lot more. Where the conflict is coming when you get to our generation, or 40s on and older, that's where the conflict is coming in at, because we are that pray about it generation. And then we are, our pastors, like Pastor Times and many others, are in that age range. So they're not acclimated. I put several posts on my page, and anybody that knows me know that I'm all about mental health management. I'm doing a lot of meetings and presentations with different people in different organizations. And I put on my post that I would come and speak to anybody's group, organization, church, anything for free. You don't even have to worry about an honorarium where I'm concerned. Just let me come talk to your people. And not one single church took me up on it. I haven't seen not any, and I may be wrong, but I'm just saying, except my church that I attend, which is New Light Christian Center Church and Fountain of Praise Church. I haven't seen anybody other than them even have mental health as a part of any conferences that they're doing. They're not including it. I don't see the alignment that Ms. Nikita talked about with the church being in alignment with mental health. They'll say it, but they will do nothing to promote it. I have a lot of friends that are pastors, and not one of them have really solicited me. I'll take that back. 2 of them did solicit me to come and speak to their church, but nobody else have. And I know a lot of pastors. So it's still a disconnect. I'm not sure. I can't understand what the conflict is, especially where you have anointed Christian field therapists who align with biblical scripture and biblical principle. I'm not understanding what the conflict is around that, because there's no conflict in any other area as it relates to healthcare management. They're never telling you, don't go see your dentist, don't go see your physician, don't go see your cardiologist or your nephrologist, or don't go, take that dialysis treatment or have a surgical procedure. They're never saying that, but they will not promote mental health management. And when you don't have your mental health in place, just like one, and I forget your name, the other young lady said, everything else is going to crumble. I don't care how wealthy you are. I don't care how physically healthy you are. I have patients as an RN that have dementia, NASA scientists and people of that nature, and they're still not functional. They're physically healthy, they're rich, but they're not functional because their mind is not functioning at the optimum capacity. So we have to do better. We have to be more aware, and we have to seek help.
I just want to say this. The stigma in mental health is real. What do you think about when you say, hey, I got a mental health problem? Hey, you got a problem with your mind. You crazy, something wrong with you. That's the first thing that's going to go off in your mind. Somebody telling you that, okay, I might not even want to be close to you. You got a problem. You got a problem with your thinking, with your mind. You might do anything. You might go crazy all of a sudden. So it's still that. Now, when we say mental health, it's becoming much less of a specific thinking about somebody being crazy. Is more so somebody seeking to be balanced. But we still got a ways to go, because it's still thought of, and the first ideal that comes to mind is, hey, this person got a problem with their mind. They got a problem with their mind. So that's where the stigma comes from. But more and more today, with everything that's happening, people do have a slight problem with things going on. We all have a few problems with dealing with and balancing life and things that are going on in this world. And it's becoming more okay to speak on it. I want to ask Brother Times, are the resources in mental health, are they adequate? Are they leave a lot to be desired? Are the resource? When I was researching about Black mental health professionals, there's quite a few of them in the Houston and the Texas area. So I don't see that there's a problem with as many people going into the industry, but are they being utilized? And are the resources from the government, the aid, and being able to pay for it, is that adequate? And I'm gonna ask everybody to speak on that. Brother Times.
Well, like I mentioned before, I used to be, I'm going to say, on the hamster wheel until, very short, maybe a few months ago. I decided to get off that hamster wheel and do my own thing because of what you just said, Rudy.
Yeah, you got to explain what the
hamster wheel is. The hamster wheel is basically, you're a clinician, you're a mental health therapist, and you're tasked with doing a public service. I have a patient, or I have 85 patients, or whatever the case may be. Most clinicians work in that environment. I won't call agencies' name, just think of any mental health agency you can think of. They have very high caseloads. And on top of that, they have to do a number of intricate tasks with each client. You give an agency phone, you're given mileage and all this kind of good stuff. The problem is there's only you're a human being, right? But yet you're tasked with 83 lives or 183 lives or 500. I know, and this is not just for therapists. I know psychiatrists who right now have 540 patients on their caseloads, and they cannot service all these people. I actually know a particular psychiatrist that actually died. This man died on a Sunday morning, and by Monday, his replacement was in his office, and they had it cleaned out. This is not an exaggeration. So the problem isn't, are there enough therapists? That's not really the problem. The problem is therapists are being worked literally to death. And I'm not exaggerating that at all. I talked to certain people at UTMB right here on the island. They're experiencing the same phenomenon. Okay. I've talked to psychiatrists on the island. 3 psychiatrists at UTMB took their life last year. Okay. Because of this very issue. 3 psychiatrists took their life last year, right here on the island. I mean, this is real stuff. Nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And then on the other end of it, you've got the clientele, the patients. They're spinning, So there's not enough real resources, right? And then on top of that, the people who are servicing the community like us, we're burnt out. I had another friend of mine and clinician, she literally just walked away from her job. And I'm talking about, I'm not doing this anymore, my health. It destroys I broke out personally. I can speak to this. I broke out in hives. I literally broke out in sores because of the stress I was under trying to deal with these high caseloads. And I'm talking about real intense psychosis, And so when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's stressful. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I had people who wanted to commit mass murder on my caseloads. I've had people who literally tried to set themselves on fire, and I mean real fire, who literally set their whole house on fire with themselves in it, And I mean, these kind of things. And so we get, sensationalized when we talk about, the gun violence thing, but there's way more than guns. There are a lot of people, who you just don't know where they're at mentally until they tell you. And even trained people like me, it takes a lot of skill for them to say, I'm thinking about killing my husband. I'm thinking about killing my kids. I'm thinking about taking my life. I want to take other people's lives. That's heavy. And people don't want to tell you that.
Understood. It's very important. If we can have a better resource or a better outcome in mental health, our society would be a little bit better. Ms. Nikita, what do you say about what we're speaking on? Specifically, are the resources adequate? Are they enough? Are therapists and practitioners overworked? What's going on in your opinion? You're on mute.
All right. I do agree with that, that therapists are being overworked, but I think that's a testament to the lack of people in the field, especially Black, brown, and queer folks. I think that there is a limitation. So if we look at the number of people that exist in Houston, especially the Black population in Houston, I don't think that there is adequate people to service all of those. That's why the caseloads are so high. And I hear you when it comes to being overworked. I mean, I work, maybe because I'm a workaholic, but I work 8 to 8 most days. Just seeing as many people as I can because I know of the need and I want to be of service. How long I can handle that, I don't know, but it is labor of love for me. I don't have quite the gravity of the type of cases that Mr. Times is talking about. We speak more on a different level, but I do think that there is quite a need that is out here in the industry as far as therapists goes that is not necessarily being spoken to. As far as insurance, I am on, I think it's 5 or 6 different insurance panels. They haven't given me, since COVID, as much trouble with approving. A lot of them are unlimited. I think with COVID and everything that was happening as far as the suicides and the relationship issues that were happening, the family issues, they have peeled back a little bit on allowing more people to get more therapy. How long that will last, I'm not exactly sure. We're still in a state of the pandemic, but I think these are things that are making mental health care a little bit more accessible. My caseload, I would say, is maybe half and half of people who are paying with cash versus people who are paying with insurance. And the people who have insurance do come on a more consistent basis than the people who are paying with cash. So that creates that mental health care gap that many of us are talking to, of having to pay exuberant amounts for psychiatrists or for mental health care. Some people will charge you $50, some people will charge you $250, which is all based upon whatever you think, or your industry, your agency thinks that you need to be charging people. But I think that is also something that we have to talk about, is healthcare access, as far as mental health goes, as far as how much we're having to pay for this access, which mental health care technically is a privilege, just like healthcare is. And so if you're not in a place where you can afford it, or you have healthcare, then it makes it even more difficult to get over that hurdle. And when we talked about, there are lots of Black and Brown therapists that are in Houston, a lot of the people that reach me will say, I have called, and many people don't pick up the phone. Many people don't call back. Many people, and even from a white therapist perspective, the statistics shows if you have an ethnic name, or they know that you are of a different race, they're less likely to call you back than a Black therapist for a Black client. That's been proven as well. And so we're having to still deal with the industrial racism, even in the mental health care fields as well.
Understood. There's a lot of points to this. I come by this very honestly. I have family members. A point of declaration, or a point of honesty. I have went through the system myself many years ago. I went to treatment twice. They call it treatment. My ex-wife, of course, went there. So, and I have a family member that is in the hospital right now. And I see all the medicines. I see all the possible. First of all, I'll say that if my family member hadn't had all of these chances at the possibility of hospitalizations, doctors, staff members talking to him, working with him, it may be very difficult. It would be very difficult for my family. So I'm very thankful for the help that we have received. And I'm very thankful across the board for my family for the help that we have received. So I have no problems with being upset at the mental health industry and how that they have done for my family and so forth. That being said, I hear horror stories. I see many people on the street, and this is probably what has to be talked about in America. Are we making our people more crazy by the society that we are building? There's so many people, there's not enough therapists, there's not enough room, because everybody's going through so many things. And it makes it very, very difficult. Ms. Camille, I want to ask you a question. What would happen if you told your family, hey, I need to get some help, some therapy, would your family be upset with you? Would they shun you? What would happen?
I've talked to my family a lot, being that I said previously, I've been working on my childhood traumas for like the last 11 years, like probably back in 2011. I began this journey in college of finding myself because just noticing differences from being at home and then being on my own. So they've been open to me like seeing people in and out as far as therapy. My mother's gone once, but I feel like because my mother is kind of dependent on my father and kind of wanting them to kind of always be one, he doesn't see therapy that way. He sees therapy as a way of, I don't need help. That's for people who are just kind of, they don't have their lives together. It's a negative thing, and it's just like he kind of sets the tone for the family. So unfortunately, I feel like because even though she wants to go, there's distance in between that, as well as just getting a little more personal. There has been some issues in the marriage, and my father knows someone who's a therapist. So my mom's always nervous as to like if I see someone, I don't know, there's some type of pushback with that. She's not comfortable with that, so she doesn't feel like she could trust someone in that capacity. Although we do talk about, I do appreciate her for I always talk to her about kind of things that happened in my childhood, patterns that I picked up, patterns that I also see in my siblings, especially my sister, because I feel like my sister, my mom, and I all share the same issues. And being that I've worked really hard to kind of overcome those, I do talk to her and tell her, hey, because of this, this is what caused us to act this way. This is why we struggle here. This is why our lives are going this way. And she's always been open to that. Sometimes there's a lot of friction and we go back and forth, but eventually she will listen. My sister does struggle. She has, what is it? The rheumatoid arthritis? Was it juvenile or something like that? She has that. So that affected her early in high school. So that really, I feel like really tackled her mental health, especially in college, because it got to a point during some of the time she was there, she struggled with even carrying her books and carrying her backpack because the pain was so hard. So you can only imagine being so young and what that does to the psyche. So she's gone in and out. She also has other things as far as like, depression and things. I try to get her to, but as a whole, I feel like they're open and not trying to criticize me. But as far as them doing that, it's hit or miss. And my dad is a miss.
It's always a journey within a family. As you said, your father's not necessarily accepting of it. There are so many stigmas against seeking help from anybody in a lot of ways. Men, we have a problem. A lot of times we have to feel macho and, hey, we can't ask for assistance, we can't ask for help, or we're not being men. So we have to cross those bridges. And in the Black community, we have to do a better job of seeking help, but also we have to be accountable and do the best that we can to improve ourselves also. And a lot of times that does come with seeking help, but it comes with also doing a better job across the board. I want to come to Cassandra and ask her about resources. Are there enough resources? Are there enough people to help this big workload, this big load of people that are coming in these trying times?
I think that resources are improving in certain areas because you have so much awareness now. A lot of celebrities are contributing to the Better Help initiative, in particular pastors. They have an initiative that pastors can recommend better help. It's a certain link that they can give out, and they get some, I don't know what the dynamic is, but they're connecting where pastors can, parishioners can use a particular code or something and start to access resources. They also, I was told, offer financial assistance and things of that nature because several celebrities are contributing through that particular place. Speaking to what Pastor Time said as it relates to working in that the community-based type of mental health, I think it may be less about the number of therapists than it is about the nature of that particular job and industry. The pay scale that they use is just like anything, any other social service that's gonna be serving a certain population of people. Generally, that industry that he's speaking of generally is going to relate to your more indigent population or your more financially challenged population. And that's rarely going to be a draw. One thing that was very shocking to me, I did my master's program at Liberty University in Virginia, and we were completely focused on licensure. I did my degree in Virginia, but I had to do my internship here in Texas. And I was surprised because I had people in the internship with me that graduated from a particular HBCU program here where they were all African American, and they were not even told anything about licensure. I couldn't understand that because it's a professional degree. I thought licensure was automatic. More than one of them that had graduated from that particular university stated it was never promoted to them at all to sit for licensure. I don't know. I'm a registered nurse, and I didn't matriculate through mental health at all. I'm an RN, and so I don't understand that whole dynamic or what that's about. And that may, because that particular program is gonna produce the most African American therapists. I'm not understanding that it was not promoted for them to seek licensure. I think a lot of it goes back to stereotypes of what they think we can and can't do. I graduated from an HBCU with my nursing degree, and we were always challenged heavily in my nursing program, trying to achieve certain things, being African American. And so we have to become more aware of the dynamics of what it means to be licensed versus having the degree. As a nurse, you can't do anything without the license. As a therapist, with an MA in professional counseling, you can have jobs that don't require licensure. And so that's a different dynamic I was unaware of. And so you have a lot of things that you have to consider as to why the dynamic is where it is. When it comes to resources where people are working actual jobs, especially corporate type jobs, almost all of them are gonna have some level of mental health where you can get at least some therapy. Some do 5, some do 10 sessions where you can at least take advantage of that. But I'll end with this on that question, and I want to relate something that you stated as it relates to, first, I literally cannot stand the terminology of crazy. That term just is like chalk on a scratching your fingernails on a chalkboard to me, because I don't like anything that gives a negative connotation. So that terminology does something to me. But when you related the terminology, I think since COVID, we have attached a different thought process around the term of mental health need. Mental health need previously meant that schizophrenic or that bipolar patient that you may be familiar with. Now you have, just like Ms. Nikita said when she used the terminology queer therapist, I just had this conversation with one of my clients, and I was not, to me, the terminology queer is a negative connotation, but she said that's not the case anymore. That is encompasses that particular population of people. I would never have used the terminology queer because I would have thought it would have been insulting. But she was informing me that it is not, no longer a term that's insulting. When you're looking at mental health, the more educated we are, because as it relates to what the term means, that it doesn't mean that you're in danger because someone is struggling in their psyche, or that they're going to do something or go off, or, and the more educated we are, so that that term doesn't carry that connotation, the more people are going to seek mental health management. And so it goes back to us being educated. The more educated we are, the more aware. That's why you see me post a lot about mental health issues on my page in particular, of trying to bring more awareness, trying to help people to understand that you have to be real unique, not to need, if you over the age of 21, I don't care who you are, you need, to me, everybody over 21 years old needs somebody to talk to, because you're just not. I don't care what family you come from. I don't care how much education you have. I don't care what it is. You're not going to get over 21 without having to deal. And I'll end with this as it relates to the school shooting in Uvalde. And one of my clients is an elementary school teacher, and he happens to teach the age group of kids that were murdered. And I asked him how his elementary school handled that. And he said that it was not addressed at all in his school. There was no counselors to address. There's not a counselor at the school. That's the first thing. And then they have somebody that they share. The school share one person, but it was not even a conversation in those schools. And, at first I had talked to him about talking to his kids, and then I said, no, I said, because if you don't have a resource in place and somebody says something and it's not really policy to discuss that, then it can open a can of worms that you may not be ready for. So if they're not addressing it, I wouldn't address it. I would just, let the kids' families deal with that. But that's tragic. In my opinion, those kids should have been brought to an auditorium with mental health professionals so that we could help answer questions and help talk. But there is not. If you think that with as many school shootings as is happening, there's only resources after a tragedy, and only for the school that's affected. So it's a lot to be desired. I don't know what the answer is, because I'm historically not a part of the mental health community, except, from when I started working on my master's until now. But I've been RN for 34 years. I've been a therapist for 7. So that's a big gap, And so I don't know what all of the dynamics are, but I do know that more resources, as she stated, are being made available if people are in jobs where they have that as a benefit. But a lot of psychiatrists, whether you know it or not, a lot of psychiatrists, you have to pay cash to go see them. There's not a covered benefit like your healthcare doctor's visits are. And that's something else that people don't know and realize. And even then, I mean, when I was at Harris County Psych Center, places like that, you try to get, well, there you could get emergency appointments, but when I, as a nurse case manager, would try to make mental health appointments, I can't get an appointment for 3 months. I would have to call, and I couldn't even get a psychiatrist that was accepting new clients. You
Yes,
know,
ma'am.
so it's a lot going on in mental health industry, but it is creepingly getting better in creeps, you know, because it's so much. You can't deny the suicide rate. Too many kids are taking their life every week. The young lady walked into the Mississippi River, looked like she cheerleader at a Southern in Louisiana, looked like she should have been popular, having everything going on, and battling severe depression, and just walked into the Mississippi River and took her life. And we can't ignore it. We have to deal with it.
Okay, that's a lot to discuss and unpack. We are getting closer to the end of our show. I wanted to give Sister Nikita, you heard her talk about the term queer. Did you want to respond to that?
I agree with her. I have understood it to be an umbrella term at this point, not necessarily something that, and I do agree that it used to have a negative connotation. Certain people do not necessarily believe, they do not associate themselves with the term. I use it as a blanket term for the umbrella LGBTQIA plus, because more acronyms are being added every day. So I use it as a member of the community for the community. And I haven't gotten a lot of pushback on that since I've been using it.
Okay. I also want to ask you about the trauma that, because I remember, Brother Times, you had shared about how kids across the board seeing what's going on, you know, they could be in Houston here and be affected by what's going on in Uvalde or Buffalo, and you know they have trauma as well as adults have trauma. How have you seen that, and what would be your suggestion in that instance, Sister Nikita?
Are you speaking to being affected by things that are not necessarily happening in your area?
Yes, yes.
If I may say real quickly, they call it vicarious trauma. That's a secondary observation or knowing of a traumatic event. It usually affects an individual just as though they were there firsthand. So that's kind of that piece that you were talking about.
Yes, that is what I was talking about. Did you want to finish your comments, Sister Nikita?
Yes, I do think that is something that's happening as far as particularly with the Black community. We saw a huge influx with George Floyd, with many of the things that we're seeing through social media. Social media is perpetuating what we are being exposed to on a more granular level than has been previously. It feels like more things are happening. My theory is that more things are just being told, more stories are being shared. And so as much as that is helping people to be more alarmed as well as informed, it's also leading to some of the mental health crisis that we're perpetuating moving forward. And so I do have people that never heard of Uvalde that are crying in sessions about it. People who have never actually had COVID or lost someone in their families to COVID. That's one question I ask every quarter. How are you dealing with COVID? Oh, I'm handling it. I'm like, no, but how are you handling COVID? Because COVID is changing the way that we are interacting as a community, as a society. A lot of people who were introverts or extroverts are now introverts. They're having troubles communicating and connecting with people. So that's a large percentage of my client base is, how do I get back outside? How do I get back outside and understand, like, I can touch door handles, or, little things, big things like that are creating some of the paranoia or perpetuating the paranoia that people are feeling. So I do think that we are suffering from vicarious trauma as well as compassion fatigue, which is just having to care so much all the time without having that break. Like Sister Cassandra said earlier, we don't get a break from one trauma before the next happens, which now is leading to people just cutting themselves off completely. I'm off of social media. I'm not watching the news. So now it's almost having, I would think, a part of their propaganda to have us not informed, as well as being over-informed on both ends of the spectrum, which is leading to some of the psychosis, as well as some of the paranoia that we're feeling as a society, as a group of people.
Understood. We are at the end of our show. As always, I would like to have everybody make a final statement. Tell us how we can, or tell the audience how they can reach you if they would like to. They'd like to get more information. But first, I want to share that two of our panelists here have upcoming mental health seminars. Brother Times, July the 10th, he's going to have mental health is good, healthy, and fine. And Sister Cassandra, August 28th, is going to have a mental health seminar. So we do a lot of seminars, mental health, and other things with our organization, the Brighter Source Group. And I talk about them here on the Sourceseeker Hour. I just want to say this also. Society has changed. Society has changed greatly. When I was in school, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, and what our kids and what our young people have to endure is a lot different. And it's not going back to the way it used to be. So we have to adjust to a whole new world. We have to adjust and try to find our wedge and our way to have an impact. And that's still in a state of flux. That's still in a state of adjustment, because things are happening all the time that are putting so much pressure in so many different directions. But we can and we will find a way to navigate. If we are going to survive, we will find a way to navigate. And a part of what I do here is I bring issues to the top. I bring issues out, having shows on mental health, on different things happening in the community. We just had a show on guns and mass shooting. We're going to have a show on abortion, our next show. So we talking about things that are happening. We getting the community and the word out and getting our opinions expressed to find out what we can do, what needs to be talked about, and how can we express and make changes if necessary. So this is our 115th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I am Baruti Carl Alexander. I thank everybody out there in the audience. I thank my panelists, my guests. I would like to go to each guest and speak on what you see as the road of mental health and share what you would like to share. I would like to start with Sister Camille.
Okay, well, thank you again for including me in this wonderful episode. Your 150th
Video just fine.
Okay, good. I guess my closing remarks will be more on what we can do to help each other, because we have lost that sense of community. We have lost, which I think one of the biggest issues as to why counseling, therapy, mental health is so overworked is because we've lost our spirituality. We've lost our connection with ourselves and with, our vertical relationships, because without that, you don't have faith. Whatever you want to believe in, you need to have faith and trust in the process, because if you can trust in the process, you can be patient. You don't have to rush. You don't have to feel like you're out of control. And I feel like that's one of the biggest reasons why we're in the situation we're in, as well as I feel like a lot of us are just caught up in this world of guilt via being in the rat race that nothing's ever good enough, especially for millennials. I feel like millennials have it really, really bad because we didn't grow up with the communities that the people born in the 60s and back and even like early 80s, 70s were born in, because you have technology, you have different job structures where people moved away from their community and their families. So I feel like even in mine, my parents subconsciously and not purposefully took for granted the fact that they grew up with their grandmas, their aunties, their uncles. You know, those were their therapists. Those were the people that they learned different things from. We don't have that. And we're forced in this system. So you feel like nothing's ever good enough. You feel that once I get this, I have to get this, I have to get this degree, or I have to get this job, I have to make this much money. And that is a lot of pressure. And you feel guilty for resting, guilty for pouring into yourself, guilty for just being a person, and knowing that, you know, you don't have to be perfect. And then two other things I feel like outside of that, that's like a personal struggle. I feel like a lot of people are hurt, and through that hurt, they're defensive. So when you do try to go to somebody, they're like, well, you know, passing the blame. They're like, well, you should know better, or, you know, well, everyone's like that, you know, belittling and undermining someone's struggle and saying, well, we grew up with that, or we didn't have that. Or if you go to your parent and say, hey, this hurt me, they tell you to get over it, you know? So with that said, I believe the solutions would be listening. You know, I feel a lot of people, because of the hurt they have, they listen to respond rather than listen to understand. So, you know, listen to people, empathize with people, you know, see their point of view, because we're all different. We all have different backgrounds. So being that lending ear, being that care, because everybody just wants to be understood and heard. And I feel like that alone will take so much strife off of everybody, you know, not trying to say that's stupid, or that doesn't make sense. Like, you know, it's not about you, it's about them, and let them share. You know, it's not for us to always say that somebody's point of view is wrong. And then, I don't know, I guess pretty much to go with all of that is just accepting, embracing. You know, God is love. So if we're gonna act godly, if we're gonna be good human beings, I feel like you start with love, and that's unconditional love, and that's accepting people for who they are and not trying to change them. And then as far as, you know, allowing someone to accept you, not forcing your stuff and your pain or whatever else, your ideologies on other people, just allowing space for everybody, you know. And I feel like that will go a long way in the meantime, because, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. Not everybody has the access, time, and things for everything, but that I feel will go a long way. But again, I'm Camille Chate. Houston CMOS Queen is my business. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and that's SCAMOSS for Houston CMOS Queen. And phone number 832-308-0027.
Blessings. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. I'll always be in touch, and thank you very much again. Brother Pastor Christopher Tynes, can you share?
Yes, I really appreciate this forum. The thing that keeps coming back to my mind is, you know, who's there to support the clinicians in the field, right? The people in the trenches, the ones who are dealing with so many types of mental health issues. I can't help but think that all of these mass shootings, right? Those types of individuals, they would be typically identified and screened by mental health agencies. And so, you know, where's that support to facilitate that type of mechanism? And also, hey, where's the support for the clinicians, the psychiatrists and the like in this particular field? We deal with a lot of stuff, but we don't really have anybody to talk about it with in a real sense. You know, so that would be nice to be able to create something like that, a community where, you know, folk actually can I'm thinking of a process group. Maybe I'll just do it myself. Process group where other clinicians can just come to the table, present cases. We deal with a lot of, even you guys in the private sector. I know that you're dealing with a lot of stuff, how do you come up with that? Who do you talk to about it? Do I have a friend of mine that I can call who's a clinician and I can throw this case at him and see, am I doing this thing the right way, or how shall I do it? What shall I do? Or just talk about it. So those types of resources really aren't there. I know they got little societies, all over the place, but they're not really cohesive. They're not networked. So it would be nice to be able to create something like that and have that for clinicians to be able to just dial in and do. And I know that's not there right now. So that's my thoughts. Chris Times here, Chris Times Ministries at WordPress.com. You can call me at 540-421-2249.
A lot of information there, Pastor Times. We should talk more about that clinician network and so forth. Sounds like there's some good meat there to uncover. Sister Nikita, you have a little bit of what he's talking about already, but share what you would like to share. What was your experience, as well as share maybe the future of mental health and how you think it's going to grow, or what is the need going to be?
Oh, I think the need is definitely going to continue to increase with things that are coming. I feel the impacts are rising. A lot of people that are caretakers are taking the realms, and they're getting tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired of being pushed down, of being not heard, as Sister Camille said. And I think people are starting to rise up, and they want to speak out for themselves. They want to speak against injustice and the things that we have been suffering from for so many decades and years and generations. And so I think I tell people sometimes my protest, my activism is therapy, because I'm able to help them get back out there and do the things that they're doing, because we represent every career that's out there. I do feel like what I teach in my therapy sessions is anti-propaganda culture, right in alignment with, I think Sister Camille stole my notes, but propaganda culture of what we are being taught and what we believe, really coming to the origin story of where did you get that from? We have a productivity culture here in America. If you're not doing something, if you're not giving, if you're not being effective, that you're not a productive or a good citizen. Where did that come from? That leads to some of the anxiety, the way that we look at ourselves, the way that we look at others. I posted today about how they tell us that we're lazy because we don't have the same as our countercultures, but they don't take into consideration the things that have happened to us on a generational basis. So I help them with red pill, blue pill. Which one do you want? Let's look at the way that you're thinking and where that thinking has come from, and try to break those things down, that we are here to have joy, to love, to not to, we're here to, I think it's work to live, not live to work. Not to be productive every ounce and every second of the day. So we talk about how can you generate more gratitude? How do you celebrate small things on top of the large things? Because we're looking so much at our 5-year goals that the day to day kind of goes by, and next thing you know, we're older and we haven't lived life. We don't spend the money we spend our whole entire lives making. And so helping them to break that down. And when I speak to anxiety, I tell them there are 2 things that most people who have anxiety have: really active imaginations, as well as a need and desire for control. And that control is over the past, the future, and the way other people think, the way the other people act, the way other people interact with us. And in getting control, we focus on the things that we can actually have an impact on versus the things that are outside of our sphere of influence. So if we're focusing on the things that we want versus the things that we don't want, we're creating that joy. We're creating things that we can be more grateful for. We're creating the world and the life that we want to live. And if we're focusing on the things that we can actually have an impact on, we are regaining control over our sphere, our world. And so that's what I do every day. How can we focus more on what you want versus what you don't want, so that either way, you're thinking about a similar thing, but one feels way better than the other. The doom and gloom versus hope and joy. And then how do we focus our time and that imagination, that energy towards developing and working towards the things we actually have control over? And so my name is Nikita Bowman, licensed professional counselor. You can find me at tackleyourdreams.com. My phone number is 832-953-5482. I also have a seminar coming up on non-binary and gender fluid in the Black community on July 21st. The information can be found on my page. So we're also bringing awareness to some of the other conversations that traditionally Black folks aren't necessarily having around LGBTQIA. What are these pronouns? I remember I had a cis hetero Black male ask me recently, what are your pronouns? I just want to make sure I'm respecting who you are. I almost passed out because that's not normally a conversation I would think that type of person would have. So I do see we're turning the corner on that, as well as the younger generation having an understanding of wellness, of the spectrum of mental health. So I do think that mental health is becoming more sought after. We do have the stigma that we still have to get over, as Sister Cassandra and Brother Times has talked about, but I do think that we're on the path, and I feel hopeful about that as well.
Sounds good. You said a whole lot there also. I just want to ask a question. You mentioned the brother that you were surprised at. What type of brother was he? I mean,
Black, you mean?
Huh?
Was he Black?
Well, I took it when you said that, you know, I'm a Black brother also, but I'm considered a nerd. Then there's a brother that might be considered a thug. Then there's a brother who might be considered a normal Black man. So that's why I asked that question.
Okay, he would probably be, he's a teacher.
Okay.
He's a ex-professional or retired professional basketball player. But he's also a nerd. So we speak on spirituality, we speak on intellect. So that's the type of person that.
And that is a point about Black people. If you try to put us all in one category, you know, you're gonna mess up, because we are so diverse in our whole being. I mean, there's so many different avenues that we cannot be put into one category. Sister Cassandra, I asked you to finish this up, to share our final thoughts as we go out and take it to the bridge.
Okay, great. My name is Cassandra Barnes. I am the owner of the Victoria Barnes, who's named after my grandmother, Mental Health and Wellness Center. I have a Facebook page under that name, as well as my own Cassandra D. Barnes RN. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I want to come back if we can and talk more about mental health in the queer community, because a lot of us are not familiar. We're not a part of that community, but that community, we have to be more educated if we're professionals, regardless of our Christian or religious or whatever beliefs.
I'm gonna come back to you. I just want to share, we had a show on our network here about polyamory, and I was totally unaware of it. So you're right, Sister Cassandra, we do have to have more shows and more awareness about the larger community. So I am going to take that suggestion, and please continue.
Yeah, we definitely do, which is why I was having a conversation with the client as it related to the terminology, because the alphabets, I can't remember those alphabets, the what, I don't want to be disrespectful. I can't remember those alphabets. So that's just why we were having that conversation. We've got to understand that our community is very broad and that we have all different types of presentations that we will experience as therapists, whether we agree. It's just like as an RN, we have patients that we serve, whether we agree with whatever is going on in their lifestyle or not. So we have to be broad, we have to be accepting, we have to understand various dynamics as it relates to human beings, period. And I've had to expand my viewpoint as it relates to that. And I appreciate you, Nikita, for being transparent and broad and bringing forth this conversation that we have to have as professionals. And so I don't sit in the judgment seat of that's between them and God and their own relationships. But as professionals, we have to have these conversations, and we never want to be disrespectful. We never want to, because a lot of mental health issues as it relates to that struggle or that presentation or what they're dealing with is because they're not valued and they're not feeling respected. And we've got to do better. We have to protect our, and I can't just say young people, because I have all ages that's a part of the queer community. So we have to learn to be respectful, whether we agree or disagree. And so that's a conversation that I definitely want to be a part of when we have it. We have to understand that at the end of the day, we have to seek what we need to protect our mental health, to protect our well-being, to protect our balance. Pastor Times made a tremendous point. My clients tell, are mild related to what he was describing, because I only deal with depression, anxiety. I don't deal with psychosis and those strong mental health diagnoses. I'm not equipped to handle that. But those are very real issues. Suicide, murder, homicide is a very real issue. And one thing that we've got to create a culture around is where our clients feel comfortable sharing that with us, because these people that are killing all of these people are not waking up one day and deciding to commit mass murder. It's just not happening. We're missing the signs because we just don't understand when somebody is battling in their mental health. It's just like you said earlier, there's a connotation that we have around the terminology. Just like the person that killed all these people in Chicago this week, and his dad's missing the signs. His dad missed the signs. Okay, I almost facilitated it. Just like other people, the other parents that have purchased a gun for the person for his birthday. There's so many mass killers, I can't even remember where they are happening, but they had purchased a gun for this senior for his 18th birthday or something. They're contributing unaware to this level of dysfunction. And so we've got to be aware, we got to seek our own help, as Pastor Times is saying, where we can go as mental health professionals to be real about what is no way 3 psychiatrists should have taken their life. That that just is not even logical. It doesn't even make sense that 3 healthcare professionals couldn't find a place to go. Pastors taking their life because they don't have a safe place to go, because they're afraid if they come clean about something, some Somebody's going to put it out on Facebook. Somebody's going to leak it. Somebody's going to expose it. And you have people dying, even if they're not technically dying. They're still dead. They're dead from the neck down. And we have to understand that, and we have to address it and deal with it. And so I appreciate these conversations. At the end of the day, we have to educate as much as we can, whomever we can. We have to speak out. We have to talk. We have to be accepting. We have to stop the judgment, and damning people to hell because of certain choices that they're making that may be different from the choices that we made. That's just as destructive, and we have to be real about that. And so I believe that things are changing. Awareness is coming just like anything else. It's going to take time, but the more we are having these conversations, sharing these Zooms on our social media platforms, taking advantage of every opportunity that we can to speak on this subject matter, that we will, and we are seeing. I have a 95% satisfaction rate, and I have counseled hundreds of clients. That is absolutely mind-boggling to me. And it shows not only that God has blessed me and anointed me with a gift to help people to get to a place of not just deliverance, but healing. And he's pouring out his spirit upon our flesh, as the word says. He's anointing us as healthcare professionals. We're ministers of the gospel. We're trained, we're educated, and we are anointed to help bring healing, not only in just to the body of Christ, but to humanity as a whole. And so I'm about to start preaching. Let me shut it down. But this is where it is, and this is what God is doing. And I have to acknowledge him, because he is bringing healing to a very dark place. And that's what he called us to do.
Okay, you said a lot. It's a lot that we got to do. I just want to share this also. Times are so tight. Challenges are so difficult. It's very difficult on so many different levels. I, being a teacher, I haven't seen things be this difficult in the classroom situation. Remember those mass killers? They started out in the classroom, and they started out, the policeman had to go and intervene in a lot of those situations. The psychologists, yes, they have to deal with this new challenge that is going on, but across the board, these challenges are getting greater and more difficult. And yes, Brother Tynes, we got to build networks of support, networks of strength, networks of being able to vent and being able to talk. And that's a part of what I am trying to do. A lot of different people are trying to do that. This is our 115th episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I am very thankful for our panelists to join us. Do we have any final hot word that you got to get out before I close? I thank you very much.
Oh, I said the 21st, but it's the 19th, but it's on my page.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sister Nikita Bowman. Yes, ma'am. Thank you all very much. We are going to close, and I'll see you next time. I'm Rudy Carl Alexander. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.